when the world is changing, expertise becomes a liability. And
Wow.
what most folks don't appreciate is the extent to which the world is changing, right?
Every innovative idea starts off stupid, right?
It is funny, like the line between crazy and genius is so thin. Our audience is primarily, we have an awesome community of insurance agents. And I think a lot of times the insurance business as a whole gets stuck in a box.
Yeah.
And even our agencies, we get kind of like in a box too, the way things that were done and the way things always have been. So it's really hard when we're talking about innovation in general to just think outside the box. Think about, hey, just because it's been done this way doesn't mean like this is the only way. Like, what about all these other things that are happening?
And what I would say there, just to kind of put a fine point on what you're saying, is when the world is static, expertise is an asset. When the world is changing, expertise becomes a liability. And what most folks don't appreciate is the extent to which the world is changing, right? And so what you see, like one of my favorite examples of this historically, the skunk works at Lockheed Martin. So this is like, and famously in the kind of Cold War era, the US government was seeking to develop a aircraft which had a lower radar signature. The problem is, we're flying bombers over and the USSR is really gifted at shooting down our bombers. And so we need a lower radar signature, and there's not a lot of progress with kind of conventional approaches. Well, this young guy, Dennis Overhauser, reads an obscure Russian math paper, and he tells Ben Rich, who's running Skunkworks, it seems like there are formulas in this paper that would inform a new design. Do I have permission to explore a new design? Ben Rich, it's a young guy, is relatively, which is to say his time's not super expensive. All right, have at it. So he takes like 6 months and he comes out with what would become the stealth bomber, by the way. It's an aircraft that registered 1/1000th of the radar signature, the next best that had ever been designed. And at Lockheed Martin, at Skunkworks, they called it the Hopeless Diamond. That was the internal name because everyone was convinced this thing had no hope of flying. The stealth bomber is unstable, not on one axis, not on two axes, but on all three axes, it's unstable. So if the world doesn't change, that means it can't fly. Now, that's in the same time period that computer stabilization was coming into being. The definition of what makes for stable is changing. And the conventional paradigm of what makes for airworthy is changing. And so you end up with this radical innovation, but it had to come from somebody who was, you could say, unfamiliar with prior art, right? And the challenge for a lot of folks is you rise through ranks of the organization and your credibility is built upon your expertise. And where the challengers and where the disruptors usually come from is someone who's questioning a fundamental premise. What if unstable is okay? And there's tons of examples of breakthroughs coming from basically somebody with a novice's mindset. And so for a lot of leaders, the question is, am I the kind of leader that a young person or that can have a stupid idea with? If stupid ideas aren't safe around me, we have no hope of innovating.
Well, every innovative idea starts off stupid, right? Like Copernicus said, no, we're not the center of the universe. And all of a sudden, he's got problems.
Totally.
Right? He pissed off a lot of people.
Favorite examples. Yeah, absolutely.
It's the best, right?
It is funny, like the line between crazy and genius is so thin, right? Everybody's crazy until they do it, and then they become genius.
One of my favorite examples too, just historically, is I think it's Lord Kepler, whoever it is, he was presenting at the kind of Worldwide Association of Physicists in 1900. This is 4 or 5 years before Einstein's Annus Mirabilis, right? It's like major breakthroughs, and proclaimed from the stage, the only thing left for physics is more precise measurement. There remains nothing left for physics to do. Is the world leading authority
in 1900.
Prior to E equals mc squared, prior to general relativity, prior to like foundational theories now that have changed how we understand the world as we know it. And the world leading expert at the time says there's nothing left to know.
Two things that can be very hard for a business owner is to be highly empathetic of either our team or our customers, clients, right? Because you get so involved with the daily business stuff, right? But like, what tools can help us get there? And then the other one is following up on that one is the idea of being okay with a bunch of failure, right? It feels horrible. A lot of times innovation is terrifying in our own business because like you're watching the dollars. It's kind of back to that whole empathy thing with our clients and our team. It's like you get so in this box that you're like scared to try stuff, and you create a culture of the don't fail, instead of like, let's try stuff, let's innovate.
Yeah, I think the trying stuff is really critical, and recognizing the world is just changing so quickly. And it's as Darwin says, right, it's not the strongest or the fittest, but it's the one that's most adaptable to change that survives. And so having that sense of adaptability, that if we're not progressing, we're probably regressing. As Jeff Bezos said, failure and invention are inseparable twins. I love that expression. If we're trying to make something, we're going to fail. That's part and parcel of even the scientific method, right? In terms of your question around empathy, I mean, one of the things that we teach people to do is, it sounds crazy, but it's go where your customers are, talk to your customers, and don't have an agenda per se, but be willing to be surprised and allow them to take you in unexpected directions. Like one of my favorite stories, one of my, now teaching partners, Kelly Garrett Ziegler, KGZ is what we call her. She's an amazing woman, amazing designer who was at Vans, and now she's at Pearson. But she told the story of the time she was at Mattel, and she said they wanted to create a product for parks. And their goal was, we want to create something that families take out into the world, maybe to playgrounds, and kind of, because you're always looking for ways to expand your footprint of your product. Started talking to parents in their homes, and we were asking them about, when do they feel relief? When do they feel like they're able to let their kids explore? And she said, for whatever reason, we ended up in the bathroom over and over and over again. We're in the bathroom because the bathroom is actually the place where finally, when a kid's in the bathtub, mom and dad can chill. What can we do in the bathroom? How do we extend bath time in a way that gives space to parents, right? And so they allowed themselves to kind of be taken off track, if you will, right? So foundational thing is, you got to interact with them, you got to try stuff with them. But then the question is, are you so married to or wedded to your idea that you can't hear, disconfirming evidence, in which case you're toast? Or are you holding it loosely and you go, well, take me off road? Like my friend Philippe runs the innovation lab at Michelin, and he said they wanted to get into kind of off-road space, tires, and they had this really cool prototype where basically folks who go off-roading need to adjust their tire pressure. And he said, we had this really cool kind of, remote control thing, like you could just pop it in, into the dashboard display, and it would adjust your tire pressure. He said, what we learned is people actually enjoy needing to be the guy who's got to get out and kind of like, and like relieve the pressure. Like there's something about the tactile experience that was really satisfying to them. So he said, we had built this technology, but it didn't really matter. But he said, one of the things we started hearing over and over again was, they feel like they don't know where the best trails are. And they ended up in this space where they're developing a product where basically you unlock the ability to discover new terrain as you improve your ability. But it's true to where the user is taking you. But if you're not willing to allow your vision to kind of go off the rails, you're never going to discover the real opportunities.
Yeah. And I think the way that it's set up, you become with bigger companies, right? Like as the expert advances, they're going to be more set in their ways because it's what got them there, right? So there's that bias, and they don't want to hear it. Oh, that's more work, man. I already did all the work. I want to sit up here and collect my freaking
and we already know how to deflate tires, but like, what do we know about trail? Like, let's just try to find somebody who wants their tires deflated, right? Because we already know how to do that, right?
Yeah. Let's not do something new. Let's just do the thing that we're doing and find the right people.
No, exactly.